to the cloud. Okay, we are starting the meeting. This is our, so the intent of the meeting today is Night Sky Protection Act update in the city code. We have been bandying about with this topic for a long time. We're hoping to move to being able to send our findings to the commission. This meeting is to review the final documents. So Bill, as you pointed out earlier, we have a folder now in our public Google Drive that includes several sections, one being the letter to the commission that outlines what we're doing. Section 2 is an introduction to the dark skies ordinance to give the commission appropriate context and motivation on why we're updating it and what we're doing. Section 3 would be the actual dark sky update recommendations, and I'm going to change the title of that because it's not just lighting recommendations. And then we can include and reference the draft dark sky ordinance text, and I would say that should just be relegated to sort of our kind of quote reference section that we want to include and send to the commission. So I think we should just start charging through it. First order of the agenda, though, for any standard meeting is to ask for public input, always. And we don't have any members of the public that have jumped in on this call yet. And if they do, we can address that. The second is a call to order. We have Bill and Jonathan are on the call. So we do have a quorum because we currently have 5 board members. And anything that we vote on needs to pass with 2. So I think as long as it's okay with that agenda, that was what was posted anyway in the public posting in the paper on Friday. I think we stick to that. The only modification to that agenda is I would request that we give this one more month or one more board meeting cycle and then just vote on it at the next one. And so this meeting turns into more of a working meeting. We can still do motions on what our next agenda is and that sort of thing, but I think otherwise we just sort of suspend normal meeting formalities and dive into the documents. Are there any that are opposed to that approach? I think I could maybe, does anybody want to have a motion that we do that so we can make it official?
Well, you can make it a motion if you want to. It's up to you. I'm not sure exactly where we are, inside or outside, working, non-working.
Yeah,
it's getting very confusing in relation to 2 different kinds of meetings.
Yeah, it's just a speed bump. If it's okay as the chair, since I'm driving the agenda on these, I'll just say let's do that, and then I will not be asking for a motion to approve and send to the commission at the end of this meeting. Okay.
Okay.
So let me share my screen. And if it's okay, I'd like to start with, I haven't shared it yet. I'm trying to hide the appropriate things here. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out if I can share all of Microsoft Word. I can't. Okay, so I will just do the each of the sections one at a time. So section 1, let's just review the letter to start with, because I think that's a great way to start our discussion. Okay, and I will make this much bigger. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've written this, and we'll update the date here to when we actually adopt this, but it's to the City Commission from the City Conservation Board regarding recommendations for updating the Night Sky Protection Municipal Code, which is section 18. Dear Commissioners, per your request, we've researched and come up with recommendations for updating the night sky section in City Municipal Code. It's linked there to the Muni Code, which was adopted in 2006. You can find those in the following attachments to this venue. So there's memos. So there's essentially 2 attachments. Attachment 1 is the Introduction to Dark Skies, which introduces the concepts to better understand how to think of dark sky ordinances and identifies the primary sources of our recommendations here. So that's attachment 1, and we'll review that after this document. Any questions or thoughts on how it was introduced so far? Silence is good. And then attachment 2 is dark sky ordinance recommendations. So that's the meaty thing, the meat of the recommendations. It includes general recommendations on updated ordinance text, including new lighting ratings and definitions and updates to specific sections. And it provides lighting zone recommendations, defines lighting zones and specific requirements, and identifies lighting zone recommendations based on land use and zoning. So that's all in attachment 2, which just to make sure we're all super confused is what's labeled as section 3 in our Google Drive. So one thing I'm just going to do right now is close those documents and rename them so that we don't have any confusion. Give me just a second. So I'm going to rename section 2, which is the intro to dark skies, to attachment 1. And then I'm going to rename section 3, lighting recommendations, to attachment 2, dark sky ordinance update recommendations. Because we don't need any more confusion. So this kind of tracks so far, right? This is kind of holistically what we've been doing for the last several months now. We recommend the following next steps to update the ordinance. So 1, City Commission discusses, and this is important because this is what Matthew had recommended, and Michael Cardos during our our other meeting, and then Matthew reiterated during our last meeting that he joined. Matthew being the deputy planning director for the city. So step one, the city commission discusses and approves these changes at a city commission meeting, including this presentation by conservation board members. Essentially, we show up and answer questions. City commission directs the city staff. Number two, they direct the city staff to incorporate these recommendations into new draft ordinance text and submit to the city conservation board for review. So all that means is, and I should probably just take that out because that's going to be redundant with the next step. City staff submits draft text to the city conservation board. City conservation board edits and approves draft text and submits to city commission for approval. Finally, city commission adopts new ordinance text as update to municipal code section 18.
All item, you're going to capitalize board under conservation board members, and you ought to capitalize at the other places you've got it.
Okay, yep. How's that sound as a procedure? So essentially we're throwing this out of our sort of bucket into the commission bucket. The commission then throws it to the city as the city's requested, because they specifically asked, can we finish up the ordinance text for you? And we said, sure, we're a volunteer board. We'd love some help on that. And then they're going to update it and send it to us, and it's going to incorporate whatever we recommend in here.
That seems fine.
Yeah.
In addition, so
Yeah.
this is,
I couldn't, well, go ahead and explain it.
oh, this part, Bill,
Out-
the part I'm about to read. Yeah. Yeah, this is why I wanted to push this, because yeah. In addition, we recommend that the commission direct the city manager to use the latest AASHTO, that's a mouthful, roadway lighting design guide. This is by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. I'm just going to take this out because it's redundant. To develop a master lighting plan. This plan may or may not be part of the ordinance update at this time. The straightforward plan can provide further section changes that address important topics, including spacing and timing of streetlights, establish dark hours during which some streetlights are turned off, particularly downtown after most businesses close. So what this is saying is these are the types of things that can be in this master lighting plan.
Why are you doing this?
What's that?
Why are we doing it?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really value having a separate thing, but the question is, do we want our ordinance text to prescribe certain things? So let me jump down to here, because there's a reason I'm doing this. I want to jump down to this paragraph, and then we'll back up. Okay. Streetlights in particular deserve particular Jeez Louise, Department of Redundancy Department, deserve mention in our ordinance discussion moving forward. With the exception of some of the newer Northwestern Energy fixtures, most of the fixtures in our city are not compliant. There has to be a plan to make this a meaningful ordinance that includes streetlights, including how that gets communicated and enforced as we grow and replace fixtures. So we can change the language in here, but the challenge, so I talked to Michael Cardos about this today, and there is a huge section in this ordinance text. The last time that this was passed, which was in 2006, there's a huge section in our current ordinance text, as we know, we've talked about this, that outlines a timeline for enforcement. And specifically says that there has to be, this is in the street lighting section. I'm just going to share this part. You share this one. Can y'all see that?
Yeah.
So this is a current ordinance text. And it says street lighting. All street lighting must be configured with the directional shield with horizontal cutoff, which is positioned to minimize any objectionable direct light, yada. So the directional shield with horizontal cutoff is the key there. All existing street light fixtures. This was passed in 2006, sorry. Not otherwise exempt, they're in violation of this chapter are permitted as non-conforming street light until January 1st, 2017, after which time they should all comply. And that there has to be a replacement plan that replaces 10% of them per year from 2007 to 2017. This plan, as far as I can tell, was never submitted, followed up on, or anything else. It didn't start on January 1st, 2007, and it didn't continue until 2017. So there's sort of two things that need to be done here. One, there has to be an enforceable way of doing this. I mean, we can't just have sections of our city code that are completely ignored. And that the biggest impact to dark sky, to night sky and dark sky in our city is streetlights. I mean, it's like 80% of the job.
So it's important, yeah.
So it's really important. And there are a lot of wonky things associated that, wonky aspects of this that impact the plan. So, I mean, if you go read the dark sky, the IDA and IES code, they specifically have a section on street lighting, and they say you should adopt a separate street light ordinance that includes a master lighting plan. And I agree. How do y'all feel about that?
Well, I don't know what a master lighting plan is, so I can't really comment on it. I don't know what that could, is there an outline of what has to be or is supposed to be in the master lighting plan somewhere?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll pay you later for leading into what I was going to show you next.
Just put street lights together, put them into one word, like that's why the blue is under it.
That's right. Here, let me put.
I mean, I can't contribute a whole lot technically, but I can. If you're going to do it one place, I mean, streetlights are all used as one word. There we go.
Okay, so hold on, I'm about to share a different thing. New share. I'm sorry, guys. If this wasn't being recorded, I would just share my whole screen, but you know, I feel like it's an invasion of my privacy to have my computer desktop. Let me GL plan. Okay, here we go. This is it. Okay, so this is the outline of the Roadway Lighting Design Guide. It's October 2018 edition. And this is just the outline. It's pretty long. It's a pretty long document. I was able to look at snippets, but we need to just buy the standard in order to get the whole thing. But you can see that the major headings here is how to do a plan, goals of the master lighting plan, a discussion of lighting curfews, and then a bunch of other stuff around studies. So having our city people go through and consider. So for example, all of the lighting downtown was not designed with any of this in mind. So anytime we have something like a new subdivision that goes in, or we are ripping up streets and replacing things, we need to have something that we can hand to contractors and engineers that say, this is our standard. This is what we do here. And that's what a master lighting plan does. It doesn't have to be complicated. So in the example of downtown lighting, you know, there is some wiggle room in the current ordinance, I think, that demonstrates that you could argue that because they look like historic fixtures, they are in compliance. But they're all of the lighting downtown on Main Street and everything is the wrong temperature, and it's not shielded in a dark sky way. It just isn't. And that's fine, except that we need to have a master plan that involves not digging ourselves into more of a dark sky hole. So a master lighting plan can have things like, here is our street lighting standard. This is the fixture that we buy. And then the city can update it every once in a while when they decide they need to buy a new fixture type. But there's nowhere to put that right now. And that's not the kind of thing you put in an ordinance.
So this is a guideline. That's basically what it says. This is a guideline for, from this point on, when you're dealing with lights, you follow these guidelines.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Well, then that's what our plan should say. And that's what I think you're trying to say there. I think you're saying is that, okay, as of October 20, whatever, 28th or 29th or whatever, anything that has to do with lighting should follow these guidelines. But then, of course, there's the enforcement on it too, but that's another Is that included in the plan? Enforcement?
No. So, yeah, so enforcement is something I think we need to address now. A master lighting plan is something that I think the city should be able to put together and we just review it. So enforcement is something I think it's appropriate for the ordinance text. The enforcement piece is it is, well, we can get in, we can read it. Jonathan, do you have any comments on any of on this? Do you agree with some of the things Bill said? Are you?
Seems good to have a guideline for people to follow. This seems like if this is a good place, that seems fine to me. Seems like the city should have done this before they redid the downtown.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, this is a problem, honestly. And the challenge is that fixing the fixtures all over the city is expensive.
Yeah.
So we got to quit digging our hole. We got to quit digging ourselves in this hole. That's the most important thing. And then having a plan. So, if we start, if, we're right in the middle of a growth policy update, and I've read the growth policy now, the draft one, and in there are some pretty astonishing growth projections that I think the general consensus are probably spot on. And so we're going to be adding a lot. And so if I think that we do this in kind of two stages. One, we gotta shore up the Night Sky Protection Act section, which is really what we're immediately doing in order to bring the code to an enforceable point. And we can get into the attachment 2 next, or we can review attachment 1 quickly, but I want to get to attachment 2 where I'll be able to show you where it kind of highlights that. But then the second thing is, how do we make sure that the city has to comply with this as we provide new permits for whole neighborhoods to be laid out in this astonishing growth scenario? And the place to do that isn't in dark sky ordinance, it's in the like a subdivision zoning ordinance, or in a separate streetlight ordinance, or and all that is or just in a master lighting plan that's ratified by the commission and by the conservation board, if this continues to be under our purview. And so I'm really concerned that we have whole sections in this ordinance that are being flat ignored. And this predates anybody. I think it predates everybody on the commission and everybody in the city, with the exception of, it's just something that was passed 16 years ago or 14 years ago and just basically ignored from then on.
Well, are they even aware?
No.
These exist?
Yeah, this isn't. By the way, I want to make that very clear. I'm not throwing them under the bus really here. I'm saying this is our opportunity to bring new awareness to it and to make right. Like, I don't think anybody is willingly ignoring this. This is just this, but the problem is it's not part of any of the city processes. I think this is why the commission asked us to look at this.
Well, I assume Mike is aware of this, that here we have ordinances that aren't being followed. And it makes you wonder, I wonder how many other ordinances are not being followed, but what's the use of having the ordinance then?
Right. So, I mean, that's the thing. Ordinances don't matter if they're not enforced, or they're unenforceable in the case of the one that we have in a lot of ways. And I think we need to instead work on, I personally don't care about having a night sky ordinance on the books if it's not going to actually affect change in our city. So we need to probably not worry about the way things should be, and instead identify what's the fastest way to start replacing streetlights, right? Or the fastest way to make sure that the actual permit process for a subdivision zoning includes guaranteed compliance with this. There's an enforcement and attention problem is really, I mean, our ordinance needs to be updated, and I say we do that per these recommendations. But after that, without something like a master lighting plan that includes attention to this, I think it's just going to be thrown on the shelf again.
Did you express this when you
Yep.
met with Mike?
Yep, and he fully supports having to develop a master lighting plan.
And whose responsibility is he saying developing a master lighting plan is?
His.
Oh, well.
So that's why if you read this paragraph, it says we recommend, this is us, the conservation board recommends that the commission direct the city manager to use this roadway lighting design guide, and I'm going to bold that, by the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, boy, that's a mouthful, to develop a master lighting plan.
So it's his responsibility to develop the plan.
Yep.
And it is possible that he may hand it back to us.
Well, I think that,
I mean, he can't do it personally.
yeah, well, I mean, they can do what they want. I mean, they can say he has to update, but the intention of a master lighting plan is to make sure that the intent of the lighting ordinances is carried out. And it's the same as, you know, there's the master plan. What do we call it, Jonathan? The strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
That's treated as a living document at the city. There's the growth policy, which will show up and be essentially, this is our plan that things like ordinances and other stuff come out of. I mean, if he generates a master lighting plan and they need more clarified street light ordinance, you know, a more clarified street light ordinance, then that's a recommendation that can come out of the master lighting plan. And by the way, if this stuff isn't very clear based on what I've written here, we can just rewrite it. But I think
I mean, I think this all sounds great.
And then what do you think about this?
We're still on the plan, on the like back page of the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Sorry. Thank you for the. Let me go back to letter. So then what do you think of? So we keep this text in the letter, We talk about compliance. This is a note about compliance schedule. I want to hear your thoughts, Jonathan. Yeah.
What are these bullet points for?
The straightforward plan can provide further section changes that address important topics, including. This is my intent, which we can try to figure out another way to do it, is I wanted to give the commission a sense without having them have to go through and read the roadway lighting design guide because they're not going to, or they shouldn't. That's very wonky for them to get into. I wanted to provide them bullet points about the ways that the master lighting plan would be used. And we can add to these bullet points, or we can
develop these bullet points, or how were these bullet points developed?
I wrote them.
Okay.
I wrote them. These are just like 4 examples. And I'd be happy to redo anything. Truly, I have no ego.
The first bullet point is just like, I was just wondering the reasoning behind it. As someone likes to walk around a lot in nighttime in the dark. If I'm downtown, I kind of like the lights to be on, but I don't know. I was just wondering.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tool in the toolbox. This is something that came up during one of our conservation board meetings, gosh, like 3 meetings ago, where we were talking about, what hours do a majority of people use lights, and is it reasonable to ask not just, in the current ordinance, with the exception of residential and some others, we have a permitted times section of permitted use times, and the whole point of that is to say that you can't use lighting essentially unless you have a business that's open, you have security lights. Here, I can switch to that. I can tell you the exact language.
I'm just curious about what drove it.
Yeah, so what drove it is late at night, and they mentioned this in the other one, late at night when everyone's asleep, cozy in their beds, with the exception of Jonathan, who's walking the streets.
Well, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is fine, but like,
yeah, sure.
I was just like thinking like reasonable hours that people are awake is like midnight, 1 a.m.
Yeah, let me switch to the ordinance text, because this is an important number. I'll tell you what, can we table that for a second so that because once we get into the ordinance text, we can just get into it. But the point is that during those darker hours, is it reasonable to turn off every other street light?
That's how it is now, because none of the streetlights work. So, like in residential areas,
right?
In downtown areas, I don't know. It could be fine.
This comes to a matter of preference. If you relate to the lighting zone idea, which steps up lighting, permitted light levels based on essentially volume of use in general, that's the theory, so that you're not emitting too much light when you really just don't need it in your city. Then you could say that, sort of dynamically, different areas of the city go from one lighting zone to another depending on the time of day. downtown Livingston is very empty at 4 a.m.
Yes, at 4 a.m.
Yep.
But not at midnight.
Yeah, and so the current ordinance text actually does it pretty well. Let me switch to that. Permitted hours of use, exceptions, and you can't see this, but I'll just read it.
That's fine.
Except for residential lights, street lights, and security lighting, all lighting shall be turned off between 11 p.m. and sunrise. Exceptions shall be granted to those businesses which are actually open for business during the hours between 11 p.m. and sunrise. So that's the current text. And there's actually a lot to like about this. The sunrise thing needs changing, but because that changes depending on the time of year. But it says it's except for street lights. So the question is, should street lights be turned on and off during the night? And it's okay if not. But that's the kind of thing that a master lighting plan could tell us. It would certainly save energy. We don't, I mean, it's kind of the whole point. And then what would that be? So that was the point of that bullet. And if we want to take it out, we can. I'm happy to.
My main concern.
Why don't we just take out the particularly downtown after most businesses close?
Cool.
Yeah, the two things that I would bring up would be, number one, a large part of this is by changing the lighting arrangement the way it is now, the lights themselves, you're going to be shooting the light down instead of shooting it up and around.
Yeah.
So you really, from that standpoint, you're saving energy to start with, because you're not trying to cover the whole sky with your light, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, the other thing is safety of people like Jonathan walking the street. I mean, if I went out right now at that hour, let's say 2 nights ago, and the lights were out at that time, I'd be slipping and sliding all over the place.
Yeah.
That's a safety issue.
Yep.
And one can say, well, yeah, but you're only one person, we can't have our ordinance or our governance based upon one person being out there. But I'm saying, yeah, but to me, it's important if I'm the person. And I'm not quite sure how you get over that hump in my thinking. Jonathan,
Well,
you brought that up, that you'd be out there. What do you think about that? Would you rather be out there without the lights on?
I was more thinking like the people that are like outside of the Mint or the office or anyone like that. And I don't know, I think it's nice to have some street lights for safety in those situations.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine. I don't think we have to, because right now, I guess we're not gonna be debating it now. I think it's fine to just like say that that's an idea to me. Because I don't know about I guess public safety is what it is, but it's just yeah.
I mean, how far can we go for public safety? That's part of the question.
Yeah, it's not a black or white, because it's easy to say, let's use more power and more lights because that's safer.
Right. And that's not, I don't think that's necessarily what we need to be doing.
Minimal public safety.
Well-
That's not what I intended. Yeah, it is a gray area, and it's difficult, and I think that's the intent. Is I mean, this is all of this is talked about in the roadway lighting design guide.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think we can just say that it's fine, that these are some things to consider. I was just thinking that downtown is the exact place that you want the lights on, whereas everywhere else you don't.
Yeah, actually, so one thing that Mike mentioned we may consider is providing an exception for the L bid specifically. And just say, you know what, in L bid, or we could upgrade L bid to like LZ, LZ3 if we want to.
Yeah, I mean, just it sounds like it's something that, yeah, I don't know, that's fine. I was just thinking, like, I think it's better to turn off lights literally everywhere except downtown. That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, got it.
And that is a safety issue, not only from the standpoint of the people walking, but also from the standpoint of the business owner in terms of somebody breaking into their place at night. Because if you don't have lights, you can't see that that's going on.
Yeah,
So-
so let's actually address that specifically, because we're getting into the meat of this. I'm excited. By the way, we're not wasting our time. This is exactly what we should be talking about. And I am going to open up the other recommendations document, because this is specifically addressed in there. Let me switch to that, share. Oh boy, come on, recommendations. I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing just okay today. Okay, so I'm gonna skip down to this section that we were just talking about. Well, actually, I think it's, light curfew, it's in here. The current ordinance section 18-5 bullet C already establishes use permitted, establishes permitted use hours as between 11 p.m. and sunrise, excepting residential lighting, street lights, security lighting, and businesses actually open during that time. Due to the time of sunrise changing throughout the year and that the dark lifts late in the morning in the winter, we recommend the lighting curfew be defined as 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then we can also say we recommend maintaining the exceptions in the current version of the ordinance if we want. So what that does then is it says any business that's open, they can have their lights on. In addition, security lighting is accepted. And there's a lot of lighting that can be qualified as security lighting.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, it's sort of counter to trying to conserve energy and save money and all this kind of thing. But I mean, you have to take in practicality from the standpoint of security and safety for the people that are living there and working there. But, okay.
We could also say exempting the central, or the LBID, the business improvement district, if you want. I think per this.
Okay, what all does that include? Business improvement district? I don't know what all that includes, but.
Good question. There is a zoning map that it is essentially the center I'm just gonna quickly pull up. I'm gonna highlight it almost where it is. I don't know exactly. Let's see there. So the C bid, I think it goes to C Street between Geyser. Does it go to, it either goes to C Street or B Street? No, I'm pretty sure it's C Street. C Street all the way over to 3rd Street between Geyser and Park. And that's a special zone in our city. It's got its own zone that's defined, and it's the Livingston Business Improvement District.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that would be good. I think to add that in, I think would be good.
Okay. So let's quickly review these recommendations. They're not actually, let's see, they're only 7 pages.
Yeah.
So I am sharing now attachment 2 dark sky ordinance update recommendations, which is the active document in that drive. So night sky protection ordinance update recommendations. This is just revision A, initial draft. Purpose. These recommendations are intended to be adopted into new ordinance text by city staff. Recommendations are, we leaned extensively on the International Dark Sky Association and Illuminating Engineering Society model ordinance to update our own to modern standards. The following key areas need to be updated or added to the ordinance text. So first is this public health intent. So these are the major ones, and then they each have their own little heading going down. So public health intent. As illustrated in the introduction to Dark Skies document we sent you, so that would be attachment 1, which we still haven't reviewed. Recent science has shown that a demonstrated impact of good sleep on human health. Also, that sleep can be adversely impacted by intense and/or blue light after the sun sets. Since the lighting of our streets can directly impact residents' sleep patterns if they're out after dark, we recommend the following purposes added to the ordinance. So currently, there's a lot of purposes added to the ordinance, and this would just be one more, which is to increase the health of citizens by promoting good sleep through exposure to low levels of warm light after dark. None of the public health benefit piece was captured in any of the language anywhere, and it ends up being a really important motivation. And there's a section in the ordinance that explicitly lists this as a motivation. And the thinking here was that adding this to that list of motivations will help guide consideration and any updates to the ordinance in the future. Does that track?
I guess.
So, list.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So here's the list right now. It's to protect against it. And these actually really track pretty well to that model ordinance as well. So the thought was don't change it, just add this to the list. And we're not getting, by the way, this is one of the few cases where we're saying directly, please add this to the list, right? Most of this is just up to the city to rewrite. Let me see what section. Sure. Okay. The next one is lighting zones. According to the best practices laid out by the IDA and the IES, identifying lighting zones is one of the best ways to provide a measured, comprehensive approach to lighting ordinance. It acknowledges simply that more lighting is needed where there are more people and where safety is particularly concerned. It also allows for much less light where land use is lower. So this is just a general statement. And then we go into lighting zone definitions. We recommend this approach where the lighting zones are defined in the ordinance per the following, and intent is not supposed to be in there. And that's where we say LZ1, LZ2, LZ3, LZ4. And we define what they are. And then there's a section about mapping lighting zones to zoning zones or land use. So this is the other part that we spent a decent amount of time on. The Conservation Board has created 2 tables. One, lighting zones mapped to zoning zones. I have no idea how else to call that. That may sound really dumb. And lighting zones mapped to land use.
Zoning districts.
Zoning districts, sure, that's good. That's much better. Leave it to the wordsmith. And I will need to update that up here, right? No, we're good. Okay, and then, and that's where I just pasted this in. The city has the discretion. So it does say the city has the discretion to implement this mapping in either method per their preference in the ordinance text. Does that make sense? So they could just do either one, but the 2 tables are below. So first we have districts, what their designation is, and then the lighting zone. So basically 0, 1, or 2. And you know, per our discussion, we could upgrade the C bid to 3. 3 is pretty high though. We've kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit during our time with this topic. And then we also have this mapped, which is, and I just color coded the 1s and 2s to make it clear what was what. So these are the land uses that are mapped in the zoning ordinances, and these are the assigned lighting zones for each of them. Jonathan, are you smiling at the cemetery getting the 0?
Just that all of it. It's really just interesting to see what's listed and what's not. I don't know, just different.
Medical marijuana facility. My gosh.
After next week, it might not be medical, might just be marijuana.
Yeah.
I hope not.
All right, we all know how Bill voted. Okay, so this is just that mapping. We've looked at this before. Unless you really want to change something, let's just move on because
That's good.
Lighting curfew. This is the section that we already went over. We don't need to talk about it again. So then this is where residential uses and lumens ratings. This is really important, so I'm just going to read the whole thing, make sure you all understand. Residential lighting has changed significantly in the past decade. There should be no reference to wattage, as different lighting technologies use energy much more efficiently than incandescent bulbs, right? Instead, the best practice is lumens, which are clearly marked on most consumer bulb packaging. Since luminaires, light fixtures, can often contain multiple bulbs, we recommend the ordinance adopt a lumen rating per luminaire. So all that means is if you have a light fixture that has 20 light bulbs and each individual light bulb complies with the lumen rating, that still doesn't comply because the ordinance is per luminaire. And there is an exception to this, I'll get to in a second. Residents and city officials can easily identify if they are in compliance by adding at the lumens per luminaire without the need for expensive light density meters. We recommend the commission officially adopt the table and lumen values included in table G of the model lighting ordinance presented by the IDA IES with 2 notable exceptions. It is included here for convenience. Yeah, I'll say listed below because so with 2 notable exceptions listed below, it is included here for convenience, and it's on the next page. This should wholly replace any other standards on residential lighting that are included in the current standard. So what that means is go and purge all the other ratings that are peppered throughout the current ordinance, because they're all over the place. And here's the table. And it's listed per lighting zone and per type of luminaire. So the notable exceptions are no LZ0 will be defined. That's not true actually, because I did include, I think, a 0 for a cemetery. So maybe we should just upgrade this to 1 and not have to worry about it. Does anybody disagree with that approach? Just to keep
Funny to be a 0, but that's fine.
What's that?
I thought it was funny to be a 0, but that's fine.
I know. I didn't even include 0 up top, so that would be, I should probably just change all these to 1s. And then that way there's no LZ zeros in our low voltage landscape lighting should be allowed at 525 lumens and LZ1. So the way that they use this is LZ1, they say no, like the solar lighting, for example, that's on your landscape. That's too much. I mean, we should just maintain the 525 lumens for LZ1. And then for this is important. So this is a situation and an example of the ordinance that's up to date is not up to date with the latest bulb offerings. So LED or equivalent strip lighting should be considered as 1 luminaire per 4 feet of lighting. And don't ask me where I got that, because I got it out of because it doesn't exist anywhere that I could find. So what I used is an estimate based on the spacing of discrete luminaires for an 8 to 10 foot ceiling. Which was, what's the density that one would reasonably put lighting? What's the reasonable lighting spacing that one would choose for discrete luminaires if they were using them to, say, light up their deck outside? And so we don't want to tell people, well, if you use LED strip lighting, you have to treat that entire strip as 1 luminaire, because if you do, then they are going to be not in compliance right away. but that's not the intent. If they're using LED strip lighting, we need to have some lumens equivalent per foot. So what that means is for LED strip lighting, it would be considered to be in compliance with this, with this text. It would be 1 luminaire considered for every 4 feet of strip lighting. Is that stupid nuance clear enough?
Regardless of how many lights are in it.
Regardless, we don't care. As long as that's why we use the luminaire thing instead of the bulbs. Because if you get into bulbs, you have to ask how many bulbs do you have. But if you treat it as just one light source, then you can say, I don't care how many bulbs are in it. So in the case of LED strip lighting, it's maybe 100 bulbs, right? But they're all real small. And it doesn't matter. We don't care. It's still a total lumen output per luminaire.
Okay. I'm caught up in the luminaires somewhere.
Yeah.
Something you have to think about because most of us don't think about it in every day.
Yeah.
Any day, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, that's why I told you this is just like in the weeds, but that's what you got to be in, I guess, if you're going to finish a text like this. So then we have non-resident uses and backlight, uplight, and glare ratings. So this is the bug light rating. So the reason that these are separate sections is residential fixtures typically are lumens, but any non-residential fixtures, as Danielle pointed out, you have this quote bug rating, and that's backlight, uplight, and glare ratings. The bug ratings is a new standard that came up about 10 years ago, and it's now widely available. So I'll just read this. Since the original ordinance text was written in 2006, a new rating standard is now widely available in all fixtures called the bug rating. In general, commercial use includes an aggregate, goodness, that doesn't make any sense. In general, commercial you know what? I am just going to delete all this. I know what I was intending with this, and I fell real flat. I'm sorry. I did not have time to proofread this before. It is easily calculated and enforced without expensive light density meters. We recommend the commission officially adopt, and this is what Danielle was saying all along. We recommend the commission officially adopt the table and lumen values included in tables A through F of the model lighting ordinance presented by the IDA/IES. So just like before, we have a whole host of zone by zone lighting tables, including some exceptions. So I'm going to show you that. Stop share, model lighting ordinance. I know. This has been, you can tell how motivated I've been to get this off of our plate because I'm tired of being in the weeds. Unfortunately, So it's table A. This is just a total, the total lumens per site for non-residential. So there's just this overall lumens. And that's in a per parking space. And then you end up with total lumens per site for any hardscape. And that's per square foot. And so those are two, those handle all parking and hardscape. And then it gets into the bug ratings. Oh, no, the next one is, yeah, this is interesting. You can add additional allowances based on the things that you have. So if you have an outdoor sales lot, you can add 8 lumens per square foot. If you have outdoor sales frontage, you can add 1,000 lumens. If you have drive-up windows, you can add a certain number of lumens per drive-up window. And if you have a service station, you can add a certain number of lumens per pump. So this is where some of these special uses get accommodated. This is something I want y'all to think about. We probably don't need to go over it right now unless you have a specific thought, but we can add special uses to this table if we want to. So that if you're using your property in a certain way, you get a larger lumen budget. Is that pretty clear?
Yes, it is clear. It sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, and then this is where we get into bug ratings. So these are allowed. So the B's are the bug ratings. So you can just, it's easy. So when they're specifying fixtures, they can just specify, they know exactly what B ratings they can use depending on what light zone they're in. And the closer you get to the property line, the lower your ratings go. So you can put a B4, which is backlight. You can put a B4 fixture, say it's mounted 20 feet above the ground. You can put a B4 fixture and you're in lighting zone 2. You can put a B4 fixture 40 feet off of the property line, but you can only put a B3 fixture 20 feet off the property line. And you can only put a B2 10 feet off, and you can only put a B0, less than 10 feet off. Is that clear? So what it does is it takes all the guesswork about what you do. If you have a giant spotlight that's right on your property line, that doesn't fly because that constitutes it's clearly going to be trespassing on the next property. And we'll include this ordinance text guide with the in the attachment to the commission, if it's okay. Maximum allowable uplight. This one's real simple. None. You're not allowed to you're not allowed to have uplights.
Sounds great.
That's one of the main functions of the whole thing.
Yep. And that's in the current text, or in the current ordinance, by the way. And then they have these glare ratings, which is essentially when you're looking at the light, how much, basically how distracting is it? And these are pretty low too. This is the kind of stuff that when you go look at the dark sky presentation that I kind of passed around the PDF of, that's in the reference folder, there's several specific examples showing that why glare is a problem. They really reduce visibility, not increase it. It's where light actually gets in the way. And then there's a total, it's a performance method. It's basically the total site lumens in lumens per site and in lumens per square foot. And these are pretty high values. And then this is again the performance method. So this is a separate method than the bug method. But it's essentially total lumens. And these are the allowances that you add to that. So this table goes with that one. Again, with outdoor sales lots and front edge and everything. And this is, yeah, I think they also said, so because lights can be tilted, you need to specify a maximum vertical illuminance. And this is the only place in the ordinance where we end up with stuff like lux, which you have to have, like, it's hard to enforce. We could take, yeah, so we could take table F out if we really wanted to and keep it simple. Honestly.
All right, the BUG again means backlighting. What are the next two words?
Yeah, sure. BUG is here's the thing too. So it's backlighting, uplighting, and glare. And here's sort of the way that's done.
Backlighting, up.
So you can see the little fixture here, right?
Yeah.
And there's a testing standard, and that's all the bug rating is any fixture that's commercially available gets this test done, and they come back with a bug rating based on lighting measurements in all these zones.
Well, I guess it's a little complicated, doesn't it?
It's what happens when you get lighting engineers involved.
Most people aren't going to pay any attention to this, of course. We understand that.
That's right.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean the bug ratings, that is why, though, you know, it's like it's why this got out of date right away. And so, but if we call out lumens and bug rating, we'll probably be okay. Because those are what's on the package, so to speak.
Yeah. Even if people don't understand what they are.
Right. Okay, we're almost done.
I was just going to ask that question. Okay, where do we go from here?
So the question is, do we want to specify temperature? This is now in the Wild West. There's some precedent for temperature. We could also just create a recommendation that the city based on fixtures and the intent to reduce blue light exposure at night, we want the city to make a recommendation on temperatures. We could also keep temperature out of this unless we start talking about streetlights. I don't know. What's everybody's temperature on temperature?
Well, I don't think temperature is that big a deal. I mean, it's mainly the light itself, which is, I consider, separate from the temperature. Then even if they do overlap to a certain extent, but I mean, people, who's going to measure the temperature on lights?
Well, most lights come with temperature on them, so you can get like a 2700K, you can get a 4000K.
Would you be able to do a quick, what would the benefit of doing temperature be?
Thanks for asking. Here is introduction to light pollution. Okay, so the biggest one is if we specify warmer temperatures, then circadian rhythms will be affected. So currently, as we go to LEDs, incandescent, right? This is the temperature output of incandescent. You can see most of the light is in the higher wavelengths, lower energy, redder, right? But if you look at LED stuff, you end up with these big spikes in the blue spectrum. If you go to the store and you buy a LED, you can buy a 2700K, you can buy a 3000. So 2700K is usually called warm. 3000 is usually called like normal or daylight. I'm sorry, normal or bright. Sorry, bright. 3500K up to 4000K. K being the quote temperature, and it's just a temperature equivalent to an incandescent bulb filament. Anybody confused yet? And those are called cool white. So if public health is something we care about in terms of how we affect it, identifying, and this shows it, it's circadian sensitivity, identifying that we want our lighting to be warmer is better for public health.
And they're the same price generally, right?
Yep.
You just have to look at the light bulb and there's a little thing on it on the box at the store, right?
Yep.
Why not make it warmer then?
I mean, I think that's the idea, is that, I mean, here's another one. So the high pressure sodium, which are explicitly banned in our city, are 2400K. Those are the orange lights, right? You go around, you see orange. When you see those really bright ones, they're 3000K. If the new ones, I'd say the new ones by Northwestern Energy, they seem to be 2700K. And when I talked to the dark sky people, they were like, yeah, in fact, you could change nothing and do no lighting ordinances. And if you just told everybody that the temperature couldn't be past like 3000K, you would be doing more than any other change. So shielding, then temperature, then intensity, then timing.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, can you, with the temperature thing, I guess 3000K, I really, I kind of lost if you were saying that warmer is good. And it seems-
Warmer is better. Yeah, warmer temperatures are better. Lower K values are better.
And is that saying the same thing?
What's that?
Are K value and temperature the same thing?
Yeah, they are. They are.
So lower K value is higher temperature.
Yep.
Okay. And if that's the best thing you can do, we could do it. Is anyone going to listen to it?
Well, I think, I mean, this relates to temperature specifications. There's two ways that this will be used. One is if we identify that we have a temperature requirement for, say, commercial lighting, and maybe we use it for just hardscape and parking or something like that, then yeah, I mean, that's something that they would have to do. And then the other one is street lighting. So right now, go downtown, go to Main Street. You are being kept awake by just the color of those lights.
So I think we should do it then. If it's better to do it, then.
Well, okay, we can suggest it, but I don't think too many people are going to follow it.
Well, I'm interested, you know, again, I think that we can get 80% of our impact in this town by adjusting what parking lot, anything that's car servicing, right? Any of these high downcasting lights that we have. So that includes street lights and parking lots and that sort of thing. And I don't think we need to designate temperature for any residential, even any commercial like entryway, any of that stuff. I don't think that matters, but I think specifically for street lighting and for, say, parking lots, that we should consider putting a cap on the perceived temperature of the bulbs. And we could just put that language in here and just say, that's what we want you to write into the ordinance text, and have them come back and tell us exactly what temperatures they're gonna permit, not permit.
Okay. That's fine.
So we
Yeah.
recommend the ordinance text include maximum perceived temperatures for so I'll say IE 2700K, 4000 Okay. For all street lamps and parking lighting. These warmer temperature color spectrums do not disrupt circadian rhythms. How do I spell that? Jeez Louise. And provide lower well, and interfere with, and I'll say, according to the IDA, and interfere less with dark sky goals. The ordinance text should specify a preferred temperature and a maximum temperature. These ratings are included in all consumer and commercial lighting already, so easy to comply with. Is that good enough?
I guess.
I know.
I'm about worn out. How much farther are we going?
This is it.
All right.
So in general, we just have two, the enforcement and the exceptions. So the enforcement's the one that we believe that by not requiring special equipment like light density meters and leveraging on-package ratings from both commercial and residential fixtures, the ordinance will be clear and enforceable. That said, it is clear that enforcement of this ordinance has been lax, particularly with regard to street light and commercial businesses. We recommend, I wanted to put in here something like, we recommend the ordinance text address how the enforcement of these rules will be incorporated into city permitting, zoning, and project planning. So basically it's, okay, it's obviously not working to have just this, like, you know, you can be cited for this. So what are we doing? And then have them come back and explain how it can be enforced better through the ordinance text.
Okay.
And that's going to be a big thing of contention when it comes back, because we're probably going to have to work pretty hard on how we do this.
Yeah, the general public is not going to understand most of this. It's going to have to be the.
Well, I mean, again, this is not really for the general public. I mean, 80% probably of the lighting that we're talking about here is is for commercial parking lots and street lighting. Really?
Yeah, well, I understand, I guess. But it's just like when we go before the commissioners, let's say we all went before the commissioners, presented this to them, and they started questioning us. About 90% of the questions they would ask, I wouldn't be able to answer probably. But as long as someone in the group can give them an answer, otherwise you're gonna think we haven't done our homework. But that's okay.
I mean, it's a
I
fair
don't
point.
question it that much anyway. But they will
Yeah.
ask probably things like, what's a lumen and what are luminaires and things like that. I think we have most of those answers available.
Yeah, those we can answer. I mean, to me, the questions that I don't think we can answer as well are, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean then to adopt this code? Who is in compliance right now and who isn't?
Huh, yeah. Well, see, that's part of it because the people, the main person on the street wouldn't know whether they were in compliance or not, or their business was in compliance or not. They'd almost have to have somebody who understood the background and understood the ordinance well, tell them whether or not they were in compliance. And if they weren't in compliance, what the penalty might be if they don't comply. But
I mean, I think the penalty for anything commercial, I think the penalty should be that you don't get your plans approved.
well, that's initially, yeah, that's true. But I mean, look at all the existing violations we've got in the city right now of the current ordinances.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. Well, we got to figure, I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, I got to figure out how do you just stop? I mean, right now, there's really unless somebody complains. I mean, that's the thing, right? This is not intended. I don't think people need to worry about this until somebody complains, and then they can be like, oh, well, the problem is, like, if it starts costing money for people and
Oh, yeah.
time.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they recognize that it is costing them quite a few bucks, then they get concerned. Well, listen, I'm gonna have to.
yeah, we can.
I'm getting kind of wary here, and it's not making a whole lot of sense at this point.
No, that's okay. We got through. So here's what we did. We got through these things. I would like to send this stuff out, have people have one last chance to look at it, and then, but that way we don't have to, like, just slog through this again. I'll send the recording to Amy. I'm sure she'll love listening to this podcast style for 2 hours. And to Danielle, same thing. And then we'll just, any additional changes, we'll just make sure that we up-rev it and just try to get it out of our bucket. We've done the best that we can with the resources that we have. We've done a lot of research on this. We've talked about it. We're going to get it off of our plate. And the ordinance is going to be written by the professionals at the city. And then we can make sure that it matched our intent and move it on.
Okay,
That's the bottom line. We're not going to solve world hunger here, but we're just going to try to shore this thing up so that we have an enforceable code. And crucially, so that as we grow as a city, that anything new that comes up absolutely needs to be paid attention to, because it's been ignored for a decade and a half now.
yeah, I don't think we're gonna retrofit very much, if anything at all. It's gonna have to be the newer stuff. And
But if
then-
you believe, yeah.
And if the differential cost-wise is very much, I can see some of the people saying, well, why are you enforcing this new ordinance on me when this guy across the street from me is not having it enforced on him? Because we're competing with each other for the buck. And it's costing me to comply and he isn't forced to comply, but that's another issue, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think also though, like, that's why we don't, I mean, enforcement of, we had decide what are the enforcement touch points for this ordinance. We'll look at what the city comes back with, because right now it's if somebody complains. So in that case, that person then complains about their competing business owner. And the city then has to go and see if they're complying or not. But until then, there's no compliance officer that's running around counting light bulbs.
That's what I'm saying. And to get your maximum in terms of saving the city money and or, well, the city, of course, is, a little different from the individual owner, but I mean, streetlights themselves, I mean, the city has to set an example by doing something with the streetlights. If the streetlight goes out, they need to follow the new ordinance to put in a new one.
Exactly.
And they can't
that's
put in a new one unless they do follow the ordinance.
Yep, exactly. And that's the piece, that is exactly what we're doing, is there's exceptions that are a mile wide for this right now. Basically, we might as well just repeal the whole act right now. So let's bring the act up into something that's people can comply with, and then let's move on.
Okay,
Okay, well then, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make the motion, we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk about other stuff over, the administrative stuff, which is what our next agenda item is and stuff later. So let me go ahead and stop, and I'll just